Good morning, you guys. This is Brian again. We're going to be going through the Code Check Complete Edition 2. We're going to do pages basically looks like 69 through 73 today. So with that being said, we're going to turn, if you wouldn't mind, turn to page 69 and let's get started. Okay, so here we are. We're on page 69 today, and we're going to be pointing out a few things. Again, every time I do these videos, I'll probably get a little better at what I'm doing. This time I highlighted a few more points going on here. This is going to be the second video of the series that I've started here. And again, we're going to be talking about the materials used on some of this piping that's out there. And again, what it's saying in here, we're going to read some of it, but again, I prefer that you go home and reread it or read it as we're going along and go back and review it, kind of get it into your head a little bit better. So basically the materials we're going to be using are all going to be third-party certified. That's what it says right up here in the beginning that we're going to be working at. Okay, we're right here. And then it says all pipes and fittings, are marked by menu. All right, meaning that basically they should all be marked on the pipes of what they do, what type of material they are, the thickness of the wall hangers, and so forth and so on. Now, as we go down there to piping support, which is one of them things that I see violated all the time, hangers must, prevent distortion and main alignment. You want to make sure you got no sags in them pipes or stuff like that. It's going to hold that material back in there, or it's just going to lay in there for freezing purposes. I had up in the attic of my house, I had some vents up there that were coming in. They were ABS vents, and they ran across. Basically, they were a little bit level, but this I put in there 50 years ago. And then all of a sudden, I had a leak in the ceiling. I went up there and I found out that what happened is I had a small sag in that vent, so it didn't drain back to the drainage. And when I had a very cold winter, it literally froze inside that pipe and cracked the vent. I would never figure it to leak from the vent, but the rain coming in actually gathered in that pipe and froze. So you want to make sure you got no sags and into them pipes. And the same thing when you're putting in drain lines. We'll talk about that more. It's just a place for the stuff to block and hang out. So and then you're going to have to cable them or jet them. All right, the hanger supports must again prevent distortion and maintain alignment. As you'll see down there, the wiring of this is one of the things you want to be careful of, is the way we wire them, the supports, the hanger supports. All right, so the wires, you cannot use plumber's tape when you're hanging plastic pipe. Okay, can't come in direct contact with it. So a lot of us use plumber's tape and so forth. That's not allowed. All right. They basically are going to have to be hung with the proper type of hangers. And I know we all violate that code, but it's not the right way to do it. And it's one of them things that, you want to make sure that you follow the code. The inspector will definitely make sure of it. And it says right there, as you go up there, no wires or metal straps containing plastic pipe. And that's in figure 1, which we're looking at. Okay, insulate the hangers that come in contact with copper pipe. Now, basically what you want to do is you want to make sure that any hangers that come in contact with copper pipe are going to be insulated or made to be in touch with copper. We're going to look at that a little bit farther. Galvanized piping does not want to touch copper. Anytime you have galvanized and copper together, you got electrolysis. Then electrolysis over a period of time creates leaks. I've seen that happen several times. It won't happen right away, but it will happen. So again, the best thing to do is just not let copper and galvanized come together. Okay, so the maximum support on interviews is going to be basically on table 3 and 4, which is right to the right of us over there. We can see them at the top. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Now, as we go down there in figure 1, it's showing the different types of plastic support spacing. Now, you got to make sure what you're spacing is correct according to the code, and we'll look at that here in just a few minutes also, the way we're going to hang it, whether it's going to be drain lines or, water lines. And again, wire and plumber, it says wire and plumber's tape are not allowed direct contact with plastic pipe. Now, again, I don't know the reasoning for all of that, but obviously when they put that in there, they've got definitely a reason. So as we go up here to table 3, we're going to look at different things on here. And again, we got to make sure that we look at the notes that are going to be involved in that. And the notes in this particular case says provide multiple storage guides, for pipes, less than 2 inches. Now that's what it says right down here. Okay. Come right over here. Okay. Less than 2 inches. Now, so we're going to be talking about vertical supports and horizontal supports. So whenever we're looking at ABS and PVC, DWV venting, Now, I mentioned earlier that PVC in some places cannot be used outside for sewage lines, but this isn't no longer, this is a drainage line. Drainage lines are inside the house, sewer lines are outside the house. A lot of time we'll say that building sewer, that means it starts basically anywhere from 18 inches to 2 feet outside of the building. Inside the house, it's a drainage line. So again, what we're looking at there, we're talking about horizontal on ABS and PVC being at 4 feet, but vertical, you'll notice that it's 10 feet. But also look there, there's a little note next to that vertical saying vertical A, or there's an A there. And when you go down there to the notes in the bottom, always read the notes. The notes are saying that need to be provided, provide mid storage guides. So them pipes inside a wall, if it's going vertically, needs to have something. In this case, if it's 10 feet, should have one at 5 feet. If it's 8 feet walls, you should have one at 4 feet. And that's to stop that pipe from moving around inside that wall. Plastic, whether PVC or ABS, expands and contracts terribly with temperature. You don't think much of it, but if you ever go on out and look at electrical lines running along the walls that are PVC, you'll see sags in them and all kinds of things. Or again, they make actually make a connection in there to take up that loss or something. So I'll talk more about that later. Okay. Again, anytime we have threaded steel piping, basically they got to be supported every 12 feet horizontally, or looks like, or here 18 or 15 feet vertically. Okay, cast iron hubless pipe. Okay, now you got to make sure you notice that it says 5 feet. 10 feet is okay for 10-foot lengths of piping, and 15 feet vertically. Now, that was a code test question. They told you that in the code when I took the test, they told you that you had cast iron pipe in 10 feet lengths. How often must it be supported? That was the key, and you're looking here and you say, oh, 5 feet. But the note says, the exception says 10 feet's okay if they're 10 feet of pipe. So it was written into the test that way. So you got to be careful what you read it carefully. And if you go in there and take that prometric exam, if you can take a highlighter in there and highlight those key words, 10-foot lengths. All right. And then you got the cold water piping or copper pipe water tubing. You'll notice that basically 6 feet for anything less than 1.25 inches and 10 feet for anything 1.5 inches and above, and vertically every 10 feet. CPVC. Now look at that. That's every 3 feet for anything, 1 inch or less, and 4 feet for anything over inch, basically 1.25 inches and above. And again, vertically 10 feet sections, but they got, again, have provide mid storage guides. PEX is every 32 inches. Now, when you're going across a basement, our floor joists are at 16-inch centers. So basically every other joist, they need to be supported. Now, if they're going, again, vertically 10 feet, but they got to have mid-story guides. And PEX, aluminum PEX, I had a small sample of this, but I've never used it, but it falls in the same category. But see there, it only allows you to go vertically 4 feet with mid, guide protection. Table 4, when we're looking at that, the UPC maximum supports for water piping. Now, they are talking about water lines, and I guess in this case, it says basically ABS, PVC, DWV horizontally every 4 feet, and at the base of each floor. That's another one you might want to look at. The base of each floor should be supported. And again, it's got mid-story, guides on there. Threaded steel pipe. Again, now this is at AHJ, authority having jurisdiction. They're going to tell you how often they need to be supported. But again, I would just look at it as steel pipe, and I would think about every 8 or 10 feet. And again, same thing going upright. Cast iron hubless, it says within 18 inches of the joint, you need to support it. So whenever we got some bends in there and elbows and things, we're going to have to support it, or wherever we're making connections. So that means, every, 18 inches within the joint. And now, again, I don't know if that'd be on both sides of the joint or not, but at the base and each floor of 15 feet. Copper water tubing. Okay. Again, every 6 feet for less than 1.5 inches, and 10 feet every 2 inches, and every floor, vertically every floor 10 feet. CPVC, again, 3 feet for 1.5 inches or less than 1 inch, and 4 feet for every 1.25 inch in grade. And again, you're going to have it at the base of each floor, and again, mid-story guides. PEX every 32 inches. Okay, and then PEX with aluminum. It's kind of the table that's above it, except one's mainly for the spacing of water lines and piping. Now, again, check with your local jurisdiction if there's a question. Okay, we're on page 70 now, and we're looking at trenches and pipe protection. And the main thing that we got to look at is that up there, I highlighted some of these things. Again, I'll get better as I go along. Piping that comes in contact must be supported for their entire length. Okay, smooth, not self-compacting backfill such as sand, pea, gravel helps to eliminate sags that could cause water to be trapped and lead to the blockage. Pipes must be protected from sharp rocks and other debris when backfilled and in place. Piping encased in concrete, requires protection, and pipes and walls and floors must be protected against damage and fasteners. Now, a couple of things that I want to talk about on there. When I did my house, I run back, basically polyethylene pipe for my water lines. I'm running it across the yard and so forth. Well, I put that pipe up underneath my driveway, and it just so happened that a rock laid on that pipe, and it took a couple of years, but all of a sudden I noticed that it was leaking. And again, when you got as much piping as I did, I had nowhere to know. But anyhow, I had to dig up the end of my driveway, to find that pipe where it was actually broken. And what happened was a rock laid on that pipe, and driving over it and the movement of the pipe underneath there slowly but surely created a leak in that pipe. And once it starts leaking, you'd be surprised on how much water can leak out of that thing in a couple of months. So again, and it's hard to find them leaks because sometimes the ground absorbs the water, so you can't find it. So you want to make sure that you got nice clean surfaces on top and below. I had another friend of mine here recently put in underground power lines. It was the same thing. He had it actually in conduit, but for some reason, a heavy rock landed on it, and it actually caused the wires to leak to each other and burned up. And it only lasted about 2 months, and they had to dig it up and replace it. So again, make sure you got nothing on them things. And they talk about frozen pieces apart, frozen ground and so forth. So when you're putting them pipes in there, you want to cover them, and you should compact around it. And usually you want to make sure that you compact up to 12 inches above that pipe before you get that skid steer in there to backfill it. And I know we're all in a hurry sometimes, but if you haven't got time to do it right in the first place, when you're going to find time to do it over is the attitude you got to take. So as we go down through here, we're going to be looking at different, piping and concrete and masonry. It says in wrap piping, to help embedded piping to prevent corrosion. And again, if you're running any type of copper tubing through concrete, or you're running it even, through gravel, you want to insulate that piping, because that lime that's in there will slowly but surely eat through that copper pipe over a period of years. So you want to protect it in some ways. Sometimes it might take nothing more than some electrical tape wrapping around that conduit just to stop that from happening before you do it. At the school where I worked for a while, they went ahead and they ran a water line underneath. They cut the floor open and they ran a water line to a table in the middle of the room. And then what they didn't do is they didn't, wrap it or do anything for protection. And yeah, when they walked out of there, the contractor walked out of there, it worked good. And it worked good for maybe 5 years or 7 years, something like that. But then all of a sudden, she started leaking right there at the floor. And again, what happened was he didn't do any kind of protection on that copper pipe as it came up through that concrete. And again, electrical tape on it probably would have stopped that. And again, it started leaking. So we had to chisel out the floor and make the repairs. So again, protect that copper pipe from any kind of, lime or materials that do it. Okay. And when you're sleeving the walls and they go through the same thing, when you go through the wall, you want to make sure that everything, you're going to seal that hole off from the foundation, but you also want to make sure that, the pipes through the foundation are, or under the footings are protected. And then see some exceptions to that. Okay. Not regulated for, bored or drilled, required for not bored or drilled sleeves, or holes through the walls. But again, the IRC doesn't have any code on that, but the UPC does. Okay. Note going down here, not required for boring or drilled, openings. Again, you want to make sure that whenever you're running a pipe through that concrete, that you go ahead, just use electrical tape, use something there to help protect that from sitting there. I had a situation where just nothing more than a galvanized line or was leaning up against the copper tubing for a period of years. It was actually, and again, started leaking there. So it does happen and it does take a long time, and you don't want to go back and have to fix it. Now, it says the same size, sleeve must be minimum of 2 pipe sizes larger than a pipe through the foundation. Now, when we talk about 2 pipe sizes, the code looks at basically when we're talking about, we're looking at, 1 inch, inch and a quarter, inch and a half, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, and I think they even use 4.5 as a pipe size. So when we're going from basically inch and a quarter to the next pipe size larger, that would be a 2 inch because you got inch and a quarter, inch and a half, 2. If you're going to 2 inch pipe, that means 3 inches, 2, 2.5, 3. So again, 2 pipe sizes larger. And again, you can find that off in the code where they use what size pipes they use. And we'll talk about that some more in the future. Okay, pipes and trenches. Basically, you want to make sure that pipes and trenches are supported for their entire length. There's no rocks supporting or, touching on the pipes, no rocks or debris within 12 inches of the back pipe fill. Okay, we're going to be talking about trenches are not to be undermined, and we're going to be looking at this here, the footings with a 45 degree. We're going to look at that on the next page, what we mean by 45 degrees there from. Water pipe within 12 inches of cover below the finished grade. We want to make sure they're below the frost line again, pipes within minimum 6 inches below the frost line. Frost lines vary from place to place. So if you're down in Florida, they basically only need to be 12 inches below grade. But if you're up in Minnesota, they might have to be 40 inches below grade. So again, you got to find out what that is. And the building sewer depth is according to local ordinances. So again, sometimes you run into a problem. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you get the inspector out there and get his blessing on it, on what you're doing, because sometimes you almost got to run them pipes at level. Okay. Water and sewer is okay in the same trench if the sewer materials are approved for use within the building. And we're going to look at that in figure 5 on the next page. Okay, we're going to be looking at water and sewer minimum 5 feet apart if the sewer material is not approved for use within the building. And then there's also on figure 2, there's an exception, which we can look at that up there on that page. On figure 2, we're talking about this over here. Okay, separate trenches. Okay, sometimes you run them in separate trenches, sometimes you don't. Okay. Now, then we're looking at the water line should be 12 inches above and to the side of, of the sewer pipe. Now, again, that's in figure 3, which is right below that. And again, sometimes they say putting it on a shelf, 12 inches above and off to the side on a shelf. So it's just the way the thing is phrased in the test or wherever you're looking at it. Water pipe crossing the sewer pipe with minimum 12 inches above, and there's an exception. And water, water service sleeve 5 feet from each side of the pipe. Now, so you're looking at them pictures over there, and they're looking at one that's in separate trenches. The sewer material was not approved for within the building. Now, the pipes in the trench, if the sewer material, again, they're talking about down there, pipes in a trench, backfill maximum of 6 inches in layers, tamped in place on the sides of the pipe, and first 12 inches above the pipe. So you want to make sure that you put the pipe in, you tamp it down tight, then you put the, the water line on it, and it should have a vertical separation of 12 inches, and it should have a horizontal separation of 12 inches. Okay. SDR pipe, which is not allowed for inside the sewer, SDR 35. So much for that. Okay, so we're turning here to page 71 of this, the code. And basically on 71, it's talking about pipes near the footing. This is what they're talking about 45 degrees there from. It's okay to have that drainage pipe above that 45 degrees, but not below it. Basically, so you don't undermine the footing. So when it can run parallel with it, doesn't matter, but it must be 45 degrees there from, basically. And that's how the code's going to address it on one of the code questions. Now they're showing you there, it says that they're showing you a common trench. They're showing you the sewer line and the water line exactly in the same trench. And again, but this is for materials that are approved for within the building. So if you're running your sewer line actually outside in PVC or, ABS, and then you run your water line next to it, according to the code, this is acceptable. So you want to be careful. Now, the one thing this page doesn't address, which I did write in there, whenever you're looking at copper tubing, a lot of times the writing on the copper tubing is going to be a certain color. And they ask you this sometimes on the test that you go in there, you know, M equals what color, writing on the tubing or markings, okay, is red. If the marking's blue, it'll be an, L type copper. If it's K, it's green type copper, and yellow is DWV. Now, again, which one is the thinnest? DWV is the thinnest piping. I think it goes along with, you know, M red. L is, basically heavier, and K is the heaviest piping. Sometimes they use those for medical gases or high pressure situations on copper tubing. Surely wouldn't want to use M on something that's going to have high pressures involved. So look at your tubing, get an idea what color it is. And you probably won't see much DWV here, but in other states where the unions and stuff have done it, or in old houses, you might find copper drainage tubing. And if you look on it, it'll be yellow in color. Now, the drainage and water pipes that have adequate slopes and size are based on the number of drainage fittings, DFUs, drainage fixture units on each pipe. Changes in directions in pipes must be done with the fittings that will not cause an obstruction to flow, and the changes from vertical to horizontal requires the greatest sweep. Okay, and as the liquid, you know, um, liquid and solids in a vertical pipe have greater velocity than the horizontal piping. So again, sometimes depending what it is. Now, when we're talking about, we're going down here to the general, we're looking at materials basically. Okay. On table 5, we're talking about drainage fixture units in this particular case. And again, you're going to see the differences in the codes. And what you're going to be looking for is what type of tubing or material you're using for the drainage system. And then you're going to be able to figure out whether it's usable or not. So when you go over there and you look at that table, you're going to see some places over there, that as an example, the UPC will accept, okay, or not accept, okay. It's not allowed in the UPC, but it is in the IRC. So again, you just have to look at it that way. Now, so the table comes in handy. So when you're working with different types of tubings, that you have that. So we're going to talk more about that here. The minimum slope is basically a quarter of an inch, and you see the exception. Now, if you'll see that over there, this is one that comes in play a lot of times, is basically when you're running, inch and when you're running pipe over there. Let me get where I'm at here. Okay, as we look at the minimum slope right there below that a little bit, and the minimum slope, and it says see the exception, is basically a quarter of an inch per foot. So when we're running drainage pipes, it does that, but there's an exception. Now, the exception says, just to let you know, that if the pipe is 1/8 of an inch, okay, is okay for 3 inches and larger. Now, that's acceptable to the IRC, but not the UPC. One of the problems that we run into, and sometimes, you got to look at that carefully, because if you got a big house and you got to run a long way with that drainage pipe between them floor joists in the basement or up in the basement ceiling or wherever the case is, that 1/8 of an inch is going to be handy, because again, sometimes it just, quarter inch is too much of a slope and it's going to come out from underneath the floor joists. And today, with the lesser use of water, and the smaller toilets and, or basically less flush or less gallons per minute, the smaller slope is better, because that's going to let the solids flow through there instead of screen. Screening solids can be a large problem. When we were at the school, they got the bright idea to change the toilets from 3.5 gallons down to, 1.5 gallons. Then we had all kinds of drainage problems, because the drainage system wasn't designed for that little bit of water flow. It was designed for 3.5 gallons. And then as soon as we started only putting 1.5 gallons through there, we started to screen solids. Then we had to cable the drains more often. We had to go in there with a jetter or jet them lines out. It just became a problem. So again, sometimes that 1/8 of an inch works better than, the quarter inch. So let your conscience be your guide on that. Now, again, the UPC now will let you go to an 1/8 inch if the pipe is 4 inches or larger and structurally, and necessary by the building official. Okay. So again, you got to find out if the building official will let you go to, you know, the, some of that information. So use that as a guide. Building drains and building branches, maximum load is based on the slope, and that's going to be on table 8. We're not going to cover that, I don't think, today. But okay, as we go on to the next over here, we're going to talk about the general thing up here, general continued, the top of the page. Okay. We're going to be building drains and building drain branches located near the slope. See table 8. All right, we're not going to be looking at table 8, I don't think today, maybe later, we'll see. No reductions in directions to flow. And that's in, figure 6 and figure 8 that we're talking about. So whenever we're going to have, we don't want to have any reductions in flow. We'll talk a little bit more when we flip the page here. Okay. Now, when we can go from you basically 3-inch to 1/4-inch water closet, bend is okay. And we're going to look at a picture of that. We had a situation at the school where they wanted to put in a toilet in a gymnasium area, and they wanted just that one toilet. Well, the flange coming off the bottom of the toilet set up for 4 inches, but they didn't, we didn't want to run 4-inch pipe over there. We just wanted to run the 3. So by using the correct fitting, we could go ahead and take that flow 4-inch to 3-inch. That's about the only exception in the code that I know of that you could actually go from a larger pipe to a smaller pipe. Okay. And it says no drilled or tap connections. Example, no saddle fittings are allowed. Now, I've seen that change. I've seen people use saddle fittings on different things because you have no choice. But again, you got to get the building official to sign off on any variance that you do in a code. And it says here, different types of plastic not glued together. Okay. There's an exception. ABS and PVC and drain is sewer listed is okay with transitional solvent. Now, IRC says no, UPC says yes. I would never use a transitional solvent. Use the correct solvent for that particular plastic. And again, they have different ones. Now, as we go down here to table 5, as we're going down a little bit here to table 5, we're going to look at some of the different things on there. What can be and what cannot be as far as the drainage materials and how they can be used. And so if you look at ABS Schedule 40, it's acceptable for above ground, underground, and as a building sewer. Okay. And PVC, again, it's above ground, below ground, and a building sewer. But remember, I told you out in Johnson County for years, they would not allow you to use PVC as a building sewer. So again, check carefully. And then it says here that the 3.5-inch OD basically you're talking about, 3-inch PVC piping underground. Again, UPC doesn't like that at all. It also doesn't like, you can see here, K and L copper for drainage units. Okay. Underground. And so again, this comes in handy if you're depending on which material you're using. Vitrified clay is just about exempt in every situation anymore. I never see anybody use it, but down there at the bottom, it says that. Make sure that you read the notes. Okay. And on the notes here, it says maintain at least 6 inches, above the soil. And the IRC says also accepts plastic less than Schedule 40. So again, depending what you're doing on that. Okay, we went to page 72 here. We're talking about drain sizing. As we look at drain sizing, we're going to look at there's a lot of things in here. Drains must be sized to carry the maximum anticipated simultaneous load, beginning with the drawing and an isometric drawing of all the fixtures and assigned to each fixture and fixture units in table 6. Starting with the highest point of the system, working down to the building drain. Each size of pipe for the number of fixture units are drawn. Okay. Note that the IRC allows the use of bathrooms and kitchen groups and takes into account some fixtures not being used simultaneously. The kitchen sink trap may be 1.5 inches and a vertical drain must be at least 2 inches in diameter. So again, whenever we're putting things in, we need to look at where they are. Whenever we do any sizing, you'll hear me say this over again, any sizing, we always start at the farthest item away. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether you're duct sizing, drain sizing, water sizing, anything that you do, you always start at the farthest point away and you work your way back. Now, so there again, that's why we want to start at the highest fixture, and we're going to start adding these fixture units as we go. We're not going to do any drawings today on the drainage systems. Later on in the future videos, I will go into draining, sizing, and that type of item that's actually I've seen on the Prometric exam, but that's another case story in itself. Now let's look at some of the fixture units that are there. You can kind of look down there and you see a bathtub is 2 fixture units, bar sink is 1, a bidet is 1. What is a bidet? It's nothing more than a lavatory. It's just a place to wash up. It's not used for fecal matter of any kind. Okay, so again, so that's what a bidet is used for. You got the clothes washer standpipe, dishwasher, not on a trap. You got all these different fixture units, and later on we're going to use these to go ahead and figure out what size drain we need. And again, we got additional shower heads. They're going to give us 2 units for each additional shower head. So if you got, more than one shower head in it, like group showers, gang showers, whatever you call them, they're going to give for each shower head, you're going to give them 2 fixture units. And the water closets are going to be 1.6 gallon flushes. They're not going to deal with too much 3.5 anymore because they're kind of, a thing of the past. But again, you never know what the situation's going to be. I had a guy in Hawaii that had blockage all the time in his line. And the problem that he had was that basically water flow in that 1.5 gallon flush. I told him, go ahead, get an old water closet, 3.5 gallons to get more water through that so it wouldn't plug up all the time. So that was a cure for that situation. It was a lot cheaper to put in a bigger toilet with more water flush than it was to go ahead and cable that drain every couple of weeks from being blocked. Okay, closet bends. This is important when you go up here to figure 6 and we're looking at closet bends. Over here, we're looking at the correct way and the wrong way. Remember, I talked about a closet bend in the gymnasium over there at the school, and they wanted to put a toilet in there, and they wanted to go from a 4-inch flange down to a 3-inch pipe. Now, one of these is correct and one of them isn't. If the proper use of the proper fitting, that's acceptable. And you can see that right there in figure 6, which one is, which one isn't acceptable. Now, the Durham fittings, I've never really worked much with them, but it includes several sections of galvanized steel pipe must be kept at least 6 inches above the soil to prevent rust. Whenever using galvanized pipe, it must be 6 inches above the ground. Otherwise, it's going to rot out over a period of years. I've seen cast iron rot out really bad over a period of years also. So hopefully you get some cast iron pipe with liners in it. You know what I mean? If you're going to put in cast iron pipe. And the Durham systems has a smooth interior waterway, whereas threaded water system pipes have a, internal ledge. Durham cast iron systems have the advantage of being quieter than plastic and are often used in upper floors of dwellings with plastics on the first floor. Now, again, whenever you're using plastic drainage systems and toilets and so forth, whenever you're using plastic, it's going to be noisy every time they flush that toilet if it's above the first floor. So if you're in a basement or wherever the case is on the first floor, you have a 2-story house, every time they flush that toilet or anything, you're going to hear that water flowing down through there. So it might, behoove you to either sound insulate that wall a little bit or insulate that pipe a little bit or use a Durham fitting. Use something where that noise is, so where noise is more acceptable. And again, nothing more annoying than be laying in bed, somebody upstairs flushes the toilet and wakes you up. So okay, we're on page 73, and this is going to be the last page for today. We're talking about the drainage fixture units in table 6 right here, okay, where we start out. And we're going to be looking at the number, how many fixture units you can put on it and how many fixture units we're going to assign. And again, according to the IRC, it's basically, or your full bath group, they give you 5 fixture units, and the UPC also gives you 5 fixture units, but note there's a C. And if we go down there and read the notes, note A says, with or without drainage fixtures of a waste grinder. So you can't put a waste grinder on it if it's got A. B says the IRA bases in a trap size and the flow rate is 5.7 gallons, more or less than 12 gallons, 2 inches and so forth. Not going to be, just let you know they're there. UPC does not have bathroom groups, in the main code text. they are included in Appendix L, which regulates local adaptation for the code. So some of the things that are done in the UPC, they're not part of the actual code. They don't allow fixture groups. But if you go to the Appendix L in the back of the code book, they're going to go ahead and tell you what you can and can't do as long as it's locally acceptable. Okay, and for each additional bath beyond 1.5 baths, add 1 fixture unit for each half bath. Okay, ain't no big deal. 2 fixture units for a full bath. So if you got more than 1 bathroom. Now, if we go down here to figure, down here to the next figure 9, it's talking about drains entering at the same level. Now here's some back-to-back fittings. And basically these are it says a back-to-back fitting shall be used for fixtures of trap arms entering at the same level. The IRC also allows a double sanitary T to be used for this purpose, while the UPC only allows it on branch drains. Okay, entering at the same level and into the barrel that is a minimum of 2 pipe sizes larger. So what are they saying? That if this right here is 3 inches, the barrel on this has to be 4 inches. Remember, I told you 2 pipe sizes larger. So that makes it, 3, 3.5, 4. Now, and there's a double sanitary T, which I would never use this. This one here is more or less a double combo almost. It's basically, even though it comes in, the flood level is going to be below. So where the drainage drains into there. So look at table 7, talks about the drainage fixture unit. So we go over here to table 7. Okay. The maximum drainage fixtures on a branch. How many fixture units can we put on it? Again, there's some notes there. Okay, so if the pipe size is 1.25 inches, basically you're only allowed 1 fixture unit on it, period. You might as well just get that in the head. Now there's A and B. Again, you got 2 notes in there. Note A says 1.25 inch pipes limited to a single fixture trap, and B, drains less than 3 inches may receive the discharge from water closets. Okay, I don't know what that means. Anyway, 1.5 inches, you got basically how many fixture units you can put on that stack going up. And again, as you see, as the pipe goes up, it grows, considerably. So even if the toilet doesn't have many drainage fixture units, you're going to see later on that you're never going to put a toilet on anything less than a 3-inch line. Even if it's only 1 toilet and the fixture units are only 3 or 5 or whatever the case is, you're still going to have to use a 3-inch pipe. And as we go down here to table 8, we're going to be looking at the IRC fixture units on building drains. And again, if you notice, it says IRC. It doesn't say anything in there about UPC to me. So you want to look at what their slope is on there. And again, the pipe size 1 inch, you got basically, you got a little note A right next to that. Remember, check out these little notes. And if we go down here to note A at the bottom, okay, it says note A says 1.5 inch horizontal branch drains to building drains limited to 1 pump fixture, including waste grinder or a 2-inch non-pump fixture. Now, again, I think that all kitchen drains basically are going to be 2 inches. The IRC or the internet IRC or IPC is going to let you to have a 2 or 1.5 inch kitchen drain. Okay, and I think that's too small. I would never put one in 1.5 inches. I would always put in a 2-inch kitchen drain. That's why I would use a UPC. And drains larger than 3 inches does not require to discharge, may not receive the discharge. Less than 3 inches may not discharge water closet. Like I said before, you're never going to be able to put a water closet on anything that's less than 3 inches. So with that being said, we're going to stop there for today. I don't know how long this video is, but again, go on there. I'm going to try to put it up on YouTube. If you like it, put a like on there and subscribe to the videos. And I'm going to go through these every day, or hopefully get more up there for you guys. So again, it's briankcks@gmail.com. If you need some information, you can send it to me. I don't know how fast I'll respond. And again, I would subscribe to this channel because I'm planning on going through this whole book slowly but surely over the next year. And so tune in and see what we can do for you guys. So with that being said, have a great day, you guys, and hope to talk to you at another time.